Edward. How are you?
Pretty good, pretty good.
Hi, awesome. Well, thanks for meeting me tonight.
Oh, no problem. Thank you for accommodating just the weird times.
Yeah,
weird availability.
Tell me about it. It's been a really crazy Halloween. I just spent, a few days in New Orleans, so.
Oh, no problem. Thank you for having me.
So, where did the inspiration behind, Sunday Night Slaughter come from, and how did you get on the project?
Basically, so I actually wrote and directed the film, and originally it was a web series that we did one episode for, and it was supposed to be 8 different, just completely non-related stories. And after the first episode, we thought it turned out so well, I was like, nobody's really watching web series anymore, so I then took a few months and kind of reworked all the scripts so they all would have, like, different parts that overlap, different characters that overlap, and decided to make an anthology feature film.
And
that's where we are now.
Have you been a fan of anthology films?
Yeah, Trick or Treat was one of my favorites. Obviously, like, the staple is Creepshow, Creepshow 2. But yeah, definitely my whole life I've been just a fan of horror, and then anthology films kind of just stemmed from the fact that it was going to be a web series, and we just had all these characters and all these really good actors that were interested. So it's just like when we were doing this, it was in like the end of 2013. Over the next 2 years, I just shot all these episodes. Getting different casts, getting different locations. So it's actually a pretty ambitious project for our budget. We had under $100,000, and we have 63 people in the cast and 30 locations. And
did it grow from there, or did you guys have to rebudget for the cast?
Oh, everything grew from when we decided to make it into a feature film, because some of the episodes were only 2 minutes, some were 4 minutes. So we extended a bunch of the episodes. Me and my producer created a web on the wall of what character could show up where without ruining the timeline for themselves and that kind of thing. So it was almost like a Pulp Fiction of horror films. This is the way we looked at it. This more or less was more for the fact that we had an anthology, and it was all about having 3 separate storylines that all kind of interacted with each other without ruining certain characters, without making stuff not make sense to the audience. So if a character died, obviously we can't make them show up later in another episode.
Yeah, right.
Maybe in one episode a person is not that big of a character, but then later on they show up and they're a huge character in another part of the film. So it has some rewatch value, because then you can go rewatch it and see all the Easter eggs that you missed the first time around.
Well, out of all the characters in this particular movie, which one do you think stands out the most to its audience?
Well, I think it's going to be very, very big when they see Corey Feldman, because Corey Feldman's character is named James Diamond, and he actually plays a TV host, kind of have you ever seen the show To Catch a Predator?
Yes, I have, yeah.
So he kind of plays a parody version of that host, a guy named James Diamond, who specifically catches pedophiles and stuff like that. But he was a really good sport about it, and he thought it was really, really cool when he did it. So we're excited to show people that, and I think he kind of pops into the film when you're not expecting it. So.
Yeah, I've only met him once, and that was in July or June or July, when he had his concert over where I lived, Corey's Angels, and I got to go backstage and meet him, and he was very charismatic, him and his Angels. And how did you get him onto this project?
So we already had Felissa Rose on the project, and she has the same manager as him, a guy named Scott Carlson. I think he originally said no, if I remember correctly. He had said no. He's I don't really know about anthology films. I don't know if I want to be in an anthology. And Felissa herself, I don't know if you're familiar with her, but she was the star of the Sleepaway Camp films in the 80s. The Ghost series.
Yeah.
It's an iconic shot of her at the end of the film, standing there naked, holding a human head, and it's revealed that she's actually a boy in film. That's kind of the twist.
Yeah.
But
okay.
no,
Angela, right?
Yeah.
Angela?
So I've been I've been good friends with her for a while. We did a short film together, and we kind of traveled in the same circles, have the same friends and stuff. So she came on board as a role as well, and she just talked to her manager, and literally within 5 minutes, we had Corey. Went from a no to yes in 5 minutes. So I don't know what she did, but she got him, and then when he came, he was just awesome. He was really cool with everybody. He even signed someone's Goonie lunchbox they happened to bring to set.
He's very good on that. You know, signing people's material and speaking to them. I just think he gets a little uncomfortable though when people start like fanboy out on him, which I tried very, very hard not to do. So if you were to, I guess, compare this to another anthology film or film of its type, what would you relate it most closest to, or where people could identify with the most?
I would probably say it's a close mix between like Trick or Treat and Creepshow, and a little bit of Pulp Fiction thrown in there. And obviously, I'm not saying I'm as good a director as Quentin Tarantino. Just like the vibe and like the rewatch value as far as like going back and seeing things that you didn't see before. I know like when I watched Trick or Treat the first time, there's a whole bunch of times like specifically Anna Paquin's character, they had all these things where they're talking about like, oh, when we went on spring break, we had that Mexican that really upset our stomachs and stuff like that.
The werewolves, yeah.
yeah. And then you go back and watch it, and you're like, oh, they were talking about this the whole time. A character gets killed maybe in the beginning of the movie, and then later in the movie, there's not really much emphasis put on it, but like you see a milk carton with their name on it in the background of a scene or something like that, or a certain character shows up in like an AA meeting. And maybe they don't talk, but they just basically are there, and you're like, "Oh, that's interesting."
When I watch anthology films, I prefer that because I can connect all of it together. So.
Yeah, that's what I want to do too. Because I know like there's a bunch of anthology films that have come out VHS and those kinds of films, but I feel like rather than being one cohesive like film altogether, it's more just like, oh, we have the same narrator. We have the same like story that doesn't really connect to anything, whereas we just wanted to make like a film where you really don't know when you're entering a new episode. It'll just cut to like, a new character. It won't be like the titles of a new episode or anything like that. So it's kind of just all one big cohesive thing. As
far as your audience goes, where do you see the movie pertaining to the most? Who would be your target audience?
Well, it's probably going to be a hard R. Just because we have a lot of violence.
Is it more like a blood and guts violence, or like a hand-to-hand, knife-to-throat sort of violence?
Everything. We have knife kills. We have poisonings. We have child's heads being blown up with shotguns. We have
that reminds me so much of Piranha. Just you saying that, just the whole bloody, the kid getting his head bitten off he was at the water park. I don't know if you've seen that scene from the remake of Piranha.
Yeah.
That's what I'm seeing in my head right now. So if it's anything like that, definitely. I'm on board for the gore.
Not to give too much away, but one of the weapons used to kill people is Twinkies.
Twinkies?
Yes. And they're used in a very unique way.
Oh, you gotta explain that a little bit.
There's this woman in the film, or I should say girl, because she's in high school. And her name is Sally, but everybody in school like picks on her and calls her Fat Sally. And these three girls like basically have tortured her for all 4 years of high school. And she finally decides that like once she doesn't get into college and once she has no future after high school because of these girls, that she's going to get her revenge. So she devises a plan, and it heavily involves Twinkies and a whole bunch of body horror, hostile type of stuff.
Where would you sit down and actually look at yourself in the mirror and say, okay, I see this vision in my head, I'm going to write it like this, and this is what my audience is going to have to deal with? Like, where does that come from?
I wish I knew, honestly. I think it's just from watching horror movies from like a really young age and getting cool ideas. I never was really like scared, honestly, by any horror movie ever. I was always just like, oh, how'd they do that? How'd they do that? That's how I knew, like, pretty young, probably around like 7 or 8 years old, that I wanted to make horror films.
You're probably pretty desensitized then, like me. to the whole
Yeah,
Gloria.
yeah. I wouldn't even even back then I would just be thinking about, oh, that's so cool, because I would always know it was fake.
Mm-hmm.
But I would always be like, that was a really cool effect. Or, like in The Thing, when like the spider creature like turns upside down and starts walking towards them. Like, how did they do that?
Mm-hmm. Well, I know that we were trying to do an interview with you right before Halloween, and from what I had researched, it was supposed to come out this year on Halloween. Is that still its original release date? Is it already out, or where can we see this?
No, it's actually been pushed. Basically, we wanted to do festivals first. At first, we weren't going to do festivals. So we're looking at April of 2018 at this point. So you'll get a few trailers very, very soon. Both a red band trailer and a regular trailer within the next month or so. And then we're going to go from there. But April is definitely like the point we're going at right now. Because what we're trying to do is we have like a bunch of different offers from like 15 to 20 different companies. But we're thinking that if we go the festival route first, then we'll have a better, we'll just get the best offer. But
I would go to see it in theaters. I would pay for this.
Thank you.
So I'm hoping if it does go out there, you get to release it in theaters as well.
Yeah, I did that with my last horror feature that came out in 2012, the Cohasset Snuff Film. We had like a limited release in Los Angeles, Boston, in Florida, as well as like a bunch of different festivals. We won the Atlanta Horror Film Festival and stuff. And I think with just the names we have not only we have Corey and Felissa Rose, we have Caitlin Jenkins, who was on ABC's Bunheads, Maria Olsen, who's in just a ton of horror movies. Like, just if you look at her IMDb, it seems like she has a new horror movie coming out every single week. And she also is the main villain in the newest I Spit on Your Grave movie. It's actually the first sequel to the original. The idea is that the wives of the original men who were killed by the main character come back and attack her while she's like in New York. And
out of any, I guess, sequel movie, what would you have to say would be your worst and your most favorite?
Well, I would have to say that I probably liked Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 better than the first Halloween, especially the director's cut. I'm a huge Rob Zombie fan, and a lot of people listening to this will probably be like, oh, I hate this guy already. But I actually like the Rob Zombie Halloweens better than the original Halloweens.
Oh, no, I'm with you on that one. As much as I give props to the director, he's a legend, I think Rob brought a little bit more to the table as far as how intense it was.
I guess as far as horror sequels that I didn't like, I would have to say probably Cabin Fever 2. What the hell's his name? Ty West actually directed the second Cabin Fever movie, but he removed his name from it because they just messed up his movie and editing and stuff like that. And when a director leaves a movie, they basically change the name, and they have this, like, if you're a Directors Guild director, they have a name that you can put in there, Alan Smithy, and that just means that, like, the director left the project.
I'm seeing a lot of Ty West. I'm seeing he did VHS. I see The Innkeepers, The Sacrament.
He's a great director too. So
yeah.
I would be like interested in seeing, what the film would have been like if they didn't ruin it for him.
Well, at least he didn't do The Hills Have Eyes too. I don't even know what to say about that shit.
I watch a lot of like low budget horror films that couldn't compare, or even larger budget horror films that I think they just didn't do a service to the original content. Like, I'm not one to like bash horror films or shows or anything like that, but I just think American Horror Story is so poorly put together in every way, shape, or form.
It has its points where it's like it's turning almost like The Walking Dead, where you just meet a lot of monsters and drama.
The Walking Dead, I feel like, is good because they are expanding upon the same story. Where I feel like if you look closely at every American Horror Story season, by episode 6, they start introducing something that has nothing to do with the original story, and it starts like throwing it in all these different ways. except for the first season. The first season was all about the haunted house. It was all about the people in this haunted house, and it kind of like stayed grounded. But I feel like every other season becomes so convoluted and absurd. Last season, they set it up to be like a found footage film, but then all of a sudden, they ruin it and have to add all these extra characters in the middle of the season and make them go back to the house with the original characters. At like the 2-hour mark, they run on the content, and then they have to just throw things in there. And then the other thing that doesn't make sense is, so they decided to have all the characters come back for each season, and that's totally fine and good, but then when you try to do that, and then you like have those characters return to more seasons as the same character, and that person's already playing another character in that season, it's very confusing. It's like last year, they had like Sarah Paulson's character. Her makeup wasn't even like really changed that much from the actual person she was playing originally on the series, because she was playing like she was playing like the reenactment actress. They took a character and brought her back from another season, and she looks exactly like the character that's in the season currently. So, and they don't say her name or anything like that. So you're just supposed to assume that it's a different character.
As far as directors go, did you ever get any inspiration from any directors, whether they be horror or whether they be, action or anything like that? Do you get inspiration from them?
I get inspiration from not only the big actors, but other directors, kind of with similar stories or doing things, low budget wise. Like Lloyd Kaufman, I think, is one of the biggest influences, just because he's had a career for so long, and he really doesn't have much budget for any of his films, and he's able to make it work. But then, like we already talked about, like Ty West. Like Ty West is one of my new up-and-coming directors. I've watched all his stuff. I'm all for like the underdog story and people being able to do things, under tremendous odds. Like I have a friend, Brandon Scullion. He's like a great director. He's like all his money pretty much goes into making new films, like Rent and making new films. Yep. And there's something I think to be admired about that. He
puts up his own money to do these films?
Yeah. It just basically like works so he can save money and make films. And, I think a lot of friends are kind of in the same boat. Like I know for the Sunday Night Slaughters, I had to like save like $20,000 of my own money. Most of the films I'm making are me, putting my own money forward or taking out a bunch of credit cards and hoping for the best.
See, and I always thought that was one of the golden rules when you're in Hollywood is never use your own money. But then there was a side of if you use some of your own money, you have more freedom behind the film. Is that true?
Well, yeah, people say never use your own money. And yeah, there's plenty of people that have that motto, but then they never make films. It's so easy for people to make movies now that like you'll just get left behind. I went to school with a bunch of people who were very, very talented, like people way more talented than me. Like, I'm the first to admit that. But because they, aren't writing, they aren't making their stuff. Like, a lot of them like haven't done anything since college. They just, some of them are like selling used cars or like aren't doing anything to do with like the film business at all anymore when they had all this talent. Or like, oh, I'm not going to make a film unless I have $2 million to make it. It's like, well, I guess you're not going to make a film.
Yeah, you have to have a starting point somewhere. I mean, what is it about profiles? You have to have a profile, and you have to profile yourself out to everybody else.
Yeah, and it's changing so much with the digital media. The camera is available to like the average consumer now. Like you are just going to get left behind if you don't have content, because even like 15 years ago, and even then they were telling us that like a calling card no longer is a short film because everybody and their brother makes short films now. Whereas it takes like a lot of planning, it takes a lot of time to make a feature film. So now like a lot of companies are expecting feature films as people's calling cards rather than short films. And there's also a lot of people who, a lot of companies, I should say, that actually prefer that you didn't go to film school because of that thing. Like sometimes film school makes people cocky. It makes people think that they're, better than they are, or that they know more than they know, so they're hard to teach. It's the same thing like for like bartenders. I've heard like people who go to bartending school find it harder to get jobs because the people see them as the owners of the bars and stuff see them as like unteachable.
I did have one shitty bartender in New Orleans, I'll tell you that. And I know he didn't own the place, but they sell something called the Horny Gator, and then they sell like 2 other premium drinks, and it tastes like watered down Kool-Aid water.
If you go to a mixology bar here, for whatever reason, they think it's worth it to charge you like an extra $6 for a drink for them to like have a round ice cube instead of a square one or whatever. I remember I ordered like an old fashioned, which is essentially just an easy whiskey drink that can be made in seconds. And it took them like literally 15 minutes to make this thing because they had to take out a blowtorch and they had to blowtorch like a sugar cube and they had to let it drip into the thing. I was like, oh my God, just make the drink, man.
And how much did you pay for it?
It was like $17.
I paid like $9 for Kool-Aid water, so at least you got something.
Yeah,
at least you got
it was
something.
just me and my girlfriend. We were there for a half hour at this place in LA, and I think she got like a regular soda, and I got two alcoholic drinks. One was just a beer, and one was that drink. And then she got some like some loaded tater tots, and our bill was like $109.
Well, speaking of that, how was your Halloween? What did you guys do?
On Halloween itself, we didn't really do much just because my fiance was a little ill. She had someone at work who had she actually is the general manager at a comedy club, and one of her employees had tonsillitis and kind of spread it to the entire place, including her. So on Halloween, all I did was I actually had a demon costume that I paid like $500 for actually a shoot a few years ago, for a commercial shoot, and I still had it. And I literally just looked up a few costume contests for different businesses, one like a video game business, and I put it on just to go there for the costume contest. And then went to like another local store and like went in there and was like, oh, can I enter the costume contest? And then just scared little kids in my complex. That was it. But we did go to a bunch of parties, a bunch of Halloween parties. Friends that were like effects artists that actually had like really, really like elaborate setups for Halloween parties. Like one guy had it so if you entered the bathroom and closed the door, like after you closed the door, the bathroom, the shower curtain opened, and behind it was like an animatronic Freddy Krueger with like a knife and everything. And the music starts playing and he screams at you.
This is at somebody's house?
This is at somebody's house, yeah.
Oh, geez. Well, that's LA for you, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a fun time. I guess not everybody's Halloween went according to their plans, but, you know, you rolled the punches on that one. I know ours.
Yeah, I mean, we did a lot of stuff too. I actually have a horror podcast as well called The Horror Geeks with a few friends. We had like a whole Halloween episode where it's kind of not like your typical podcast. It's more like almost like the Daily Show for horror, where we have like little skits and like little like off interviews and that kind of stuff. So it's not just talking heads the whole time. The whole thing's visual, so it's more of like a show rather than a podcast. I think people have liked it so far. So
if our listeners actually want to follow up on the movie and anything else you're doing at the time, such as your podcast, where can they go? Sure.
So there's my Instagram is an_anti_hero_production. So an anti-hero production, just with underscores between each. And I post a lot of like exclusive like photos there, both of this film and another film that I'm currently working on. And then we have a Facebook page for the Sunday Night Slaughter. If you just look up the Sunday Night Slaughter, it'll come up. The podcast is called The Horror Geeks, and you can just look us up on YouTube, all one word, The Horror Geeks. It's not like your typical thing. We're usually talking about like newer movies. We're talking about whole genres as like as a whole thing. So we'll have a whole werewolf episode. We'll talk about all werewolf movies. We'll have like exorcism episode. We'll talk about all exorcism movies.
I'm a one-woman show over here, so everything, my blog, my videos, Twitter account, everything is all me. So
the podcast is really the only thing where I have help on, and I feel like that's testament to how people persevere and stuff like that. You have to persevere if you want to make it in the indie world, just because you can hire people, but usually you're the person who's doing all the work.
Sometimes it's kind of like it's a good and bad thing. It's good because you know that if you do it, you rely on yourself, you have everything together. But it's also, sometimes I think it's more stressful because you're doing all the work and then balancing your personal life. In case, for all my listeners right now, this guy actually contacted me. So that tells you a lot about his character.
Well, yeah, it was just a very, very early, actually have Google set up to tell me about whenever the Sunday Night Slaughter is mentioned. And I saw the video you put up about Corey Feldman, and at the end you mentioned Sunday Night Slaughter. So I was like, oh, let me give you the scoop on this, see if she wants it. We're actually just starting to do like podcasts about the film. It became like way more relevant now that Corey kind of has gone to the public and that kind of thing. Which we had no idea was going to happen when we made the film. It just was like a happy coincidence that he's a guy who catches pedophiles, and now he's outing all these pedophiles.
Well, he was in a documentary. It wasn't
Open Secret?
Yes, The Open Secret. It actually wasn't out too long ago. I did watch that, and that's how I caught, because I was a huge... I'm a fan of, to be honest, I'm a fan of both Corey Haim and Corey Feldman, He
actually was on Dr. Oz and outed John Grisham as the guy who molested him when he was a boy.
Yeah, I'd read that earlier, and you know what? I was not thinking that at all.
Like, as far as, like, the high money, like, powerful people, it's definitely not him who he's talking about, because that guy doesn't even have I don't think he acts anymore or anything. He doesn't even have a photo on his IMDb page or anything like that, so...
he's an actor. Because I was thinking, even director.
Yeah, he was in a License to Drive and, another one of his earlier films.
As far as that goes in Hollywood, I mean, how far do you think that goes? Not just in regular movies, but it's even in horror.
I've heard rumors about 3 separate people that have done like bigger films in the horror genre, either sexually assaulting or sexual misconduct towards women and men, actually. And that was just like in the past like few months. I think it's like very widespread. I think there's a lot of people that maybe they weren't the most popular person in life, or maybe they, have low self-esteem, whatever, and being in this position of power, and not even just in film, I think just being in a position of power, especially when you have low self-esteem, makes you feel like you can get away with more, makes you feel like your status has been brought up, and makes you feel like you're entitled to get away with a lot more. And I came to the conclusion that, like, probably 99.5% of all women that I know have either been like sexually harassed or sexually assaulted by someone at some point in their life. It's just all positions of power, even sometimes not positions of power. Yeah, I'm not going to name the names because I don't know the validity of it, and I know that one of them is in a court case at the moment that I don't want to jeopardize or anything like that or become a part of. There's one director who apparently hired a woman for a scene through like a casting website, and the woman showed up to what she thought was like a fake, simulated sex scene for a horror film. And she showed up, and it was at this guy's mom's house. He was both shooting it and acting in it. In between scenes, he would try to actually like have sex with the girl, and she accounted all this on her Facebook, like a huge thing, said his name and everything like that. A friend of mine got assaulted by someone in the comedy world. Just like the documentary said, like before, it was literally an open secret. Like all these people getting away with doing whatever they want, like abusing anybody they want. Anybody
in general has been overtaken by somebody with power or has been a victim, if they're listening or hearing about later on, that it's important to speak up and stand up for yourself and first off, know that you're not alone. And second off, know that no matter who they are, they can't have any more power over you than what you allow them to. I mean, I know that in Hollywood, there are these closed doors, and there's people that there's threats made, and there's things that happen in dark alleyways in the underbelly of Hollywood that I don't personally know about, but I know it's present. But even then, it's almost like it's going to poison you for the rest of your life,
Yeah. It's like the people I know are just, they are not the same after that. And like certain things, whether it's something small, like I can't watch certain horror films because there's a rape in it. It affects people in different ways, but it definitely is, like a lifelong scar.
Have you ever had that issue before, or have something similar happen to you like that, or know anybody very close to you that has?
I mean, me being a guy and me being all in the entertainment world, I got hired to be a PA on something when I first got here. I was like 20 years old. This guy who like directed a bunch of films in the 80s, and he was supposed to pay me, and he kept like putting off payment, being like, "Oh, come back." And it was, instead of being at a studio, it was like in his house. And he's like, "Oh, we're gonna watch this movie together," and had me like sit on his bed, and I was like super uncomfortable. But no, I can't say that like firsthand it's happened to me. Definitely people I know in my immediate family, and definitely people I know, as friends out here, it's definitely happened to, and everything from the actual assault to like roles being offered for sexual favors and that kind of stuff. There's a lot of strange people you'll meet in the horror genre, though. Like 99% of the horror industry is like just like the nicest people in the world. There's like a strange underbelly that like are the kind of people that would take advantage of people, and that's why I said like I know like 2 directors off the top of my head that have accusations against them right now. Both these people have like films on Netflix and everything that have like wide releases and stuff.
Well, see, I think that there comes a certain point where people kind of, they take it over the top. I think, and honestly, in my opinion, anybody else out there can disagree all they want, but there are some people who make these accusations and they're not really to the fullest, they're not really completely true. They're either over-exaggerated or they're missing a big chunk and they're just trying to make sense, so they decide to turn the story into something different, and it ends up ruining somebody's life, And not in all cases, but in some.
There definitely needs to be a distinction too between like sexual assault and groping, because like I could go to a bar and have gone to a bar. I would say like there's a chance that someone could like grab your butt, or like if you're a girl, like someone could like grab your breast or grab your butt or something like that. It's just all seen as like sexual assault. I think there needs to be like a distinction between like someone doing something because they're drunk at a bar, whereas they're still liable for that.
Oh yeah.
Is grabbing someone's butt at a bar while you're super wasted the same as like raping someone?
Yeah, exactly. As far as this movie goes, would you be able to tell us anything else that comes from the inspiration behind the characters in it?
Over the years, I wrote a lot of scripts for short films that either I didn't have the budget for or didn't have time for, that just ended up, I just never ended up shooting for whatever reason. But, after like 3 or 4 years, or even like, maybe more than that, maybe like 8 or 9 years, I looked at my computer and I had all these scripts that I had written for short films that I had never made. And I was like, I really want to do something with these. And I went back and read some of them and took the ones that I liked the best. There was like 15 or 16 scripts. And I took the best 8. And I was like, I want to make this into either a web series or something. I definitely want to do something with this. There's characters, John and Krista, in the film. This couple's arguing. They're arguing. You think they're just having a typical like couple argument about like sleeping with other people or whatever, but really they're having an argument about eating other people without each other.
Oh, cannibals!
They're cannibals.
Yeah, cannibal couple. When you picture a character in your head and you're just writing it fresh out of your memory, is there anybody that you picture in your mind at that moment that you think, oh, you know what, they look and feel like they could be the part, or is it more just like a sort of a process where they may or may not work?
Well, right now, actually, I kind of, I'm at a spot where I'm trying to write scripts in the means of like knowing that I can actually shoot the scripts. Like knowing like, okay, I'd like to have a huge budget, but if I can't, I'd still be able to shoot this, shoestring if I really wanted to. Most of the stuff I'm writing for people that I already know and have worked with in the past, either in other movies or commercials or that kind of thing. I will admit, a few years ago, Malcolm McDowell is like my favorite actor.
Yeah.
And I wrote a script with him in mind as the main character, and then I sent it to his manager. His manager didn't even send it to him and was just like, "Oh no, he's not going to do any more horror films at the moment." And I was like devastated by that. But I was like, "Oh, I just wrote a script for this guy, and the manager's not even showing him it."
I mean, how does that go when you cut it off between the talent and the management behind it?
If you know them personally, it's a lot easier to get them to do stuff, especially not union stuff, where it's like they wouldn't be getting paid, millions of dollars for, or hundreds of thousands of dollars for. A lot of the times, we do have to go through the managers, and it just depends on where the actor is at in their career, what other stuff they have going on. Sometimes we can do it based around their time. It just worked out for me in the past. Like I did a movie where I was executive producer and co-director, or a special guest director, I should say, a few years ago, where we got Kane Hodder and Ari Mahaloff. Kane Hodder, obviously, Kane Hodder, obviously, Jason, the most notable Jason of all the Friday the 13th series. And Ari Mahaloff was Leatherface in Texas Chainsaw 3, as well as like in the Hatchet series and all these different movies. Their manager actually contacted us because we were just shooting in the location that they happened to be in at the time, seeing if we had roles for them, and we actually like added roles for them.
I think the last thing I seen, well, it's not the last thing that he did, but the last thing I personally watched was an episode. I guess you would say they're episodes of Kane Hodder, and I think it's on Amazon Prime if I'm not mistaken, called The Killer and I. But of them filming, if you're familiar with it, they're filming when he was launching his big book, and it was just like these little mini series that they were filming of their tour, and behind the scenes what they did, how they interacted with each other, kind of like a little like family video thing. Yeah,
2 weeks ago I actually saw an actual full documentary on Kane Hodder. They had it's called To Hell and Back. It's basically about just his whole life in general and becoming Jason and how that kind of changed his life. And it goes into like when he was like badly burned early in his career during like a fire stunt that he attempted and all this stuff.
I probably listen to a podcast or an interview every day when I'm working just to get me through the day. So when I get the chance to watch a really kick-ass documentary, I'm watching it. I'm making time for that.
Well, you can watch mine for free on Amazon right now. I have one on Amazon right now for free.
Oh, yeah. Why don't you tell everybody what that is?
It's called Unsigned, and it's about 3 unsigned rock bands trying to make it in Los Angeles. And we follow them over the course of a year. They all have different like stories. Like one guy is actually homeless, and he's booking all of his gigs through his cell phone, and he just like showers at the gym and lives in like the band's lockout, which is basically like a storage unit where they just practice and stuff. And the other guy is like had some success, and they're all like rock bands, but like different kinds of rock bands. Another guy's like had some success, but now he has like a wife and kids, and his wife doesn't think that like music should be in the cards anymore and wants him to get like a full-time like good paying job because he has 2 kids in a small apartment. The final band is like probably the most talented musically of the 3 bands. However, they have the hang-ups of like really being into like drugs, rock and roll, like the lifestyle, the look, and like into what like the rock and rollers before them did, and war and the drugs they took and all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of like a self-destruction type of thing. But it's called Unsigned. And then I have another film also on Amazon, the one I was talking about earlier, the Glass of Snuff film, which is a mockumentary. And it's about a kid in high school who gets a camera from his yearbook club, and he's told to go get interviews with all the seniors for the graduation ceremony. And instead he films himself plotting out and carrying out the murders of 3 classmates and uploads it to the internet. I
don't know if you ever seen that well, it was a mockumentary, actually. It was at the film festival a few years back. It was called What We Do in the Shadows, Vampires. It's a mockumentary movie about a group of vampires that are living in the current age and how they get through going through the centuries. And they're all different kinds of vampires. They got different personalities, and it's really cool. They end up getting in a fight with werewolves and going to a ball, and I think one of them has an ex that he calls the Beast, and we're thinking it's a real beast, but it's just his ex.
There's a new one coming out, too, that just is about the werewolves. It's just called What We Do in the Shadows, too.
Oh, is it going to be released, or is it going to be the film festival again?
I just saw, I believe it was a teaser trailer recently. So I'm assuming that'll go to wherever the first one went. As you said, you like documentaries. I actually am shooting one right now. I should say it's done, and we're about to go to festivals, called Our Friend John. A really close family friend of mine passed away in 2013 due to
sickle cell anemia and kind of the ailments that come with sickle cell anemia. And before he died, he was writing a script for a horror film that he wanted to make with his friends, my brother being one of them, and then his two friends. They decided, as a tribute to their friend who died, they were going to make his film, the short film. So we did a documentary about the process of them just doing everything, because we let them do everything from scratch, as far as like picking the actors and shooting it, picking out a camera, picking the locations, all that kind of stuff. So we had a documentary where we followed them throughout this whole process that took like close to a year, because they really had no idea what they were doing, and kind of were learning on the job.
Well, as a final send-off, why don't you tell my listeners one more time where they can find you and follow you and to keep up on your newest movie?
Sure. On Twitter, my handle is just an anti-hero. And then on Instagram, that's where I'm like most active, Instagram and Facebook, is it's an anti-hero production with underscores in between each word. So an_hero_production. You can find our friend John on Facebook. You can find the Classic Snuff Film on Facebook. You can find the Sunday Night Slaughter on Facebook by just putting the titles in there, and the fan pages will show up there.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you very much for joining me today, Edward. Once again, everyone, that is Edward Payson, and this is Spooky Gal signing off. You can find me on Twitter for No Guts and Glory. You can find me on Facebook. You can find my YouTube channel as well. I would love to get a follow-up interview sometime when you know what else is going on or anything else you have coming out.
Anytime. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, Edward. Bye-bye.